I didn't need to do a TV show. I wanted to do anything to get the understanding of transparency and consumerism and understanding and collapse this divide of food. And then even more so, collapse it of supplements. People don't know what or where, or even still, 90%, probably more than that, you don't even know where it's from. Even the people selling it, they don't have their hand in transparency or full understanding of where it's from, and they certainly don't know the farmer.
Welcome to the Model Health Show. This is fitness and nutrition expert Shawn Stevenson, and I'm so grateful for you tuning in with me today. I'm so excited about this episode. Truly, this is one of the most remarkable people that I have met. He is a real life Indiana Jones type guy. He's just going on these incredible adventures, but he's bringing back great gifts for all of us. And many of us, as you're going to discover today, are getting access to things that he's made possible. We might not even realize it. We might be putting it into our smoothies every day. Something that he's brought to the market is incredible. But even more so, he has a huge heart and bigger vision for sustainability, for helping every part of the process of nourishing our citizens, but taking care of the land that our food comes from, taking care of the people involved in growing the food that nourishes our body and takes care of the land where it comes from. All of this matters, and this is a bigger conversation that needs to be had. And I first connected with this guy. We've known about each other for a while now, but we actually got to meet face to face at his place. And it's like in the hills and valleys, all this stuff I'm very new to. I don't know about this stuff. I'm from St. Louis. It's pretty flat. But out here we got the cliffs and the valleys and all this stuff. And he gave me the directions, to his place. And I for sure thought that I was about to just drive off the side of a cliff on accident where he's telling me to make this right turn at. It just didn't look right. I didn't like it, my city mind. But of course, I grew up somewhat in the country as well. So I channeled that and made it there. And I saw this land that was just, something happened there, you can tell. And what happened, and I believe it was during the filming of this incredible show that I'm going to tell you about, the wildfires destroyed his home. He lost his home while he was doing something to help the rest of the world, to help us, to impact the lives, literally of millions of people at this point. What he was doing, and at the same time, his home, he was losing everything that he had. And so I pop up there, and he's built this little, it looked like it was on another planet. It looked like I was in that movie with Matt Damon on Mars, this little gazebo thing that was built there. But he had it packed with, these incredible foods, created a vibe there as he's, putting the pieces back together. He's building a new place. He still has his property there, but he's just been somebody who's going above and beyond to create access to health and wellness for so many people and sustainability, and just such a cool person. And the show that he was filming became the #1 show on Netflix. It's called Down to Earth with Zac Efron. And maybe you've seen the show, but I definitely think at the end of this, you're definitely going to want to check it out. And you get to hear the intention behind the show. And the show itself, even my family would get together and we watched various episodes of the show. And it's cool. It's something that brings people together, but it also changes your thinking. And you realize that there are solutions to our biggest problems. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what we need exposure to. So, but the show just took off. Became the #1 show on Netflix, which is a big deal for a show about education and adventure and heart to become the #1 show at a time. This was during, shutdown times. So it gave an infusion of hope at a time we really needed. But you're going to find out, too, there's a lot of synchronicities with our special guest today. So our guest today is Darin Olien, and he's the co-host with Zac Efron of the widely popular Netflix docuseries called Down to Earth. And he's a highly recognized exotic superfood hunter and supplement formulator. He's also the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Super Life. And now on this episode, we get to dive in and find out the story behind the individual who's brought superfoods to so many people. So let's jump into this conversation with Darin Olien. Well, I first met you, I dropped into your place and you had to drop a pen. It's one of those places. You can't just find it. And I'm thinking, okay, if I make this right here, I'm gonna go off of a cliff. I'm very unfamiliar with the hills and valleys of California. And so I take this little itsy bitsy road to your place, and it is just the most incredible vibe, that I really needed that, man, and you setting up shop there with that energy. There's superfoods abundant around your place. Chaga, your dog, got to meet Chaga. It's just an incredible experience, man. But I want to talk about how you landed there, because you're from Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get from Minnesota to the valley that scared Shawn, California? Like how?
Well, yeah, it's I was a normal kid in Minnesota. I kind of started to understand I was a little bit of the black sheep of the family. But my dad was an ag professor at the University of Minnesota.
Interesting.
Which it wasn't conscious at the time, but I knew what he did and I was proud of him. And, I practice grading some of his students' papers and stuff. And so and my grandfather sold tractors in South Dakota. All of my cousins literally are ranchers and farmers. And so to me, it was a great, wholesome kind of way of growing up. And then, kind of all the way back, what set this trajectory of really why I showed up in the hills of Malibu was I was born 2 months early. I was 3.5 pounds. I've since had like spontaneous, crazy, trippy recapitulations of my birth, as weird as that sounds. In transpersonal psychology program I was in, we were doing regressive work, and I had this intense moment of the birth process for me. And so I almost died several times. I was in an incubator. I was tiny. And they were like, the brain may not be developed, the lungs aren't developed. And so this set my trajectory from the point of view that having a body and living this life, this is really vulnerable. Like I feel scared, vulnerable, weak. So I since from that moment, I had several things I had to kind of overcome. I had a resting heart rate of 120 beats per minute upon waking. So my thyroid was messed up. I don't know if that had anything to do with my dad was a part of the Dragon Keepers. He worked on atomic bombs.
Holy moly.
Yeah, on the in the JFK days and Cuban Missile Crisis, he was part of the blockade. And so he since had a thyroid, his thyroid went kaput. So I don't know if that was correlated at all or something, but anyway, so it was a bumpy road in a lot of different ways as a kid. But then at 13, in the middle of Minnesota, I started a grapefruit cleanse spontaneously. Mom didn't even know. She just bought me a bag of grapefruits, and I just started eating those all the time for days. And it was the first time cognitively and consciously I felt different. And the medication I was doing from ADD and ADHD and kind of the unsettledness in my body, I was drinking about 5 to 6 bottles of Coke a day, like old-fashioned bottles of Coke.
Yeah.
And when I stopped that, I started eating grapefruits. I was like, wow, I feel amazing. And so cut to at 16, I picked up my first dumbbell, and I started realizing that, I can build this body, and what I eat can fuel this body, and I have choice, because I didn't think I had a choice. And so in that process, I then went from 16 years old, 13 to 16, and working out and obsessively working out. I have an addictive gene in my personality. My father ended up passing away 17 years ago of alcoholism. So my addiction turned, luckily, good, and I just fueled my body. So I went from, 135 pounds at 16 and gained 60 pounds and started playing football. Well, I played football, but obviously it was a lot different and so defensive end and never leaving the field and fullback and all of that stuff. So then I ended up cut to starting fullback at a college in Minneapolis my sophomore year, beating out all the big guys. Like I was 210 pound fullback, which was small for a fullback, but I loved to hit. And so I was super stoked for that season. And then the first game I got crushed by this linebacker, and it tore my sacral plexus, the ligaments on my sacrum, and it froze up after the game. Like the natural Novocaine wore off, and then it ended my career. And then that, the human spirit stepped in again and was like, what can I do? So then I changed my major. I left that school. It was too hard to be around my teammates and not being able to play. Studying physiology, kinesiology, nutrition in my undergrad, kind of a liberal arts approach to health, because I was in a liberal arts school. So I was able to nutrition and physiology and applied, training and learning how to tape ankles. Like it was a wide variety, but nutrition stood out, physiology stood out, and kinesiology stood out, the study of movement. To this day, like I can go in and go, oh yeah, that muscle is firing and this muscle isn't, and okay, cool. And so then after college, I ended up apprenticing with a physiologist, exercise physiologist that was doing movement work with people who were doing injuries and having injuries and stuff. So long story short, I did that for a while, but the nutrition thing, and then this doctor who was retired ended up coming to my house and telling me nutrition is the answer. What I did isn't. Nutrition is the answer. So he started kind of before the internet was crazy. He had functional medical journals and things that he would drop off, and he would basically lecture me.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy. And then he passed away. But it didn't fully sink in yet because I was still from the old school, like eat tons of protein, eat all of this stuff, and eat, overconsume, and it didn't matter kind of what the quality was. And then that finally shifted. I had digestive problems and acidic and all of that stuff. And then I started questioning protein. And I was starting seeing the research of recycling of amino acids. When autophagy happens, the body's really keen on keeping things that are hard to get, and those are building blocks, amino acids. So when the cells are sloughing off, the body kind of obviously the body changes in every nanosecond, but it does try to reserve and preserve and use those amino acids. So I was I started questioning how much protein I was consuming based on what I actually needed. And then I was like, I don't think I need meat, dairy, fish, or eggs. So I literally just did an experiment, N of 1, and backed into it and doubled my workouts. I started doing biathlons, triathlons, weight training, and all of that stuff to feel what my body needed. And I was like, wow, I feel amazing. And I stopped altogether. I stopped eating all meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. So that just, then I got completely, to answer your question, as I know this is very long, then I got fascinated back into nutrition with looking at labels and food and realizing, oh, why are these people making compromises? Because these foods, some of which have been used for 10,000 years, 20,000 years with Ayurveda, the marketing doesn't match the science. The marketing doesn't match the bottle. It doesn't, the efficacy. So then I was like, now, long story short, and full circle, my DNA went to, I got to meet the farmers of where these things are from. That was just a no-brainer. Where are they? They're in the Amazon. They're on the sovereign mountains of Tibet. They're on islands. They're like, and I was like, okay, so let's go. Like I'm researching, I'm looking, I'm tasting, I'm experimenting, I'm playing with formulas. Next obvious step for me was just jump on a plane and show up, meet the farmer, look at the holism of what's happening. How are they growing it? What are they using? What's the ethnobotanical approach to this? How can we look at it not just as the food, but make sure the food and the supplement or the botanical is preserved and grown correctly? Right. And then how does it translate into the bottle? It has to go through a HACCP certification and FDA and all of these regulatory principles without killing it. And so then I'd go to the Amazon for the first time in like 2002, 3, and I was like, I came away with 100 things I'd never heard of. So then, of course, the curiosity is just exploding with like, people don't know about this and this and this and maca and sasha inchi and yacon and schizandra. And like, I was like, what the hell? And so that led to the last 20 years of superfood hunting. And then luckily in that, I was putting formulas together. I was starting my own stuff because I was like, no one else is doing this. No one else sees what I see that I can tell. So I'm going to put this together and create a business. And then in the process of formulation of that, I ran out of money doing all of that. And then Beachbody came to me, and I ended up formulating for them Shakeology, a superfood blend. And it was an incredible combination because they let me just do my thing.
Yeah, you share with me too what you put into it. That's why it took a lot of time for you to formulate it.
Yeah.
And the investment was kind of like upfront of your energy, to see all the back end results. I think it's been like $3 billion that they've done or something crazy like that.
$4 billion in over the last 11 years.
And that's something that you formulated, but most folks don't know where it comes from. And so many of these superfoods folks know about today. Yeah. You were one of the people getting it out there and available in the world, even the realization of it. That's what I love about you. The term superfood hunter, you were that. Like, you go and track this stuff down. Yeah. It's so remarkable. And then you landing in a space, because when I first met you, when I came over, I just assumed you were from here. You got that vibe, but you really a worldly person, all the different things you've seen and experienced, and bringing that stuff back. But when I found out, as soon as you told me you were from Minnesota, I literally was like, I only know like 3 people from Minnesota. And one of them I talked with today, Dr. Alan Christensen, literally.
Oh, cool.
I know Prince and Kirby Puckett. And then that's it. I'm like, what? Darin, really? And then to hear your story. And now, because I didn't know that, like about your dad. And that, like, there's this nature versus nurture thing. And you just shared so much about even the way you came into the world. This freaks me out about you, man. Like, this is the second time that this has happened, because these things were happening when I first met you. But the synchronicities, I just started reading an article about infant amnesia, basically not being able to remember stuff, pretty much for most folks before the age of 4. Yeah. And I've got like bits and pieces of some experiences before that, which is my wife, she's always tripped out. She's like, how do you remember that? I remember that. But if we could, I think we were designed in a way to protect us from the pain, in a sense, because just imagine how traumatizing that would be. Like, if you remember, coming out football style and like somebody's cutting your umbilical cord from your mom, So, but for you to share that, like, there were so many things. It was like, there's such an essence of truth there that goes untold. You know what I mean? But I wanted to also ask you about, with you being in the place that you are today, dude, something really remarkable happened recently. And my wife, she just told you the story. She was getting her hair done, and you were on TV, on Netflix, with the show Down to Earth with you and Zac Efron. And, you know, your team and my team have been talking for a little while, but she was like, she pointed in my head, she was like, you have to watch this show. This guy's amazing. And usually the people she actually introduces me to ends up being like my best friends. You know, I don't know what kind of juju that is. But I'm super curious, man. Like, for something to come about, you've been behind the scenes and you went from that to like literally big screen. So how did that even take place?
The down to earth thing, yeah. So it's a very serendipitous thing. So for the last 10 years, people would say, "My God, you gotta film superfood hunting." It's just so fascinating because you get to see culture, you get to influence people, the environment, if you do it well, right? Conscious consumerism, like make sure everyone, especially the farmers, are taken care of, especially in areas that really, really, really need it, and they're suffering in a lot of different ways. So that was always my approach. Have I been successful? I try my damnedest to understand them. And so, but, you know, I didn't need to do a TV show. I wanted to do anything to get the understanding of transparency and consumerism and understanding and collapse this divide of food. And then even more so, collapse it of supplements, right? So because people don't know what or where, or even still, 90%, probably more than that, you don't even know where it's from. Even the people selling it, they don't have their hand in transparency or full understanding of where it's from. And they certainly don't know the farmers. So I just kind of said, okay, I've walked away from production deals, and it was going to be so much effort on my part, and it wasn't there. They just didn't get it. So I just said, well, I've been exposed to water problems, population problems and struggle, and children dying of waterborne diseases at a rate of 6,000 a day around the world. I'm involved in the environment. I'm involved with guys with clean energy tech for the last 17 years, things that people don't know. But these are my every aspect of life moving forward I'm interested in, right? So I was like, let's scrap this idea, not totally of superfood hunting. Let's make it a little more whole. Let's talk about pollution. Let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about what other people are doing around the world, because people don't know. I've seen way too much. Incredible people, and also technology that can save a lot of things. Sovereignty of water, power, food, shelter. These things absolutely exist now. And, you know, without slamming the government, but I'm going to slam the government, they are largely ineffective. When it comes down to when you're in a village and these people are suffering, I've been in Western Africa and Senegal looking at baobab fruit, an incredible revered baobab trees, sitting with the elders and talking to them about potentially let's work together. I'll pay you X for these that are naturally on your land. And then I had one question: how's your water? I already knew the answer. Right? Horrible. And it's like, you know, they didn't say this, but I'm saying this. It's like Russian roulette. You need to drink it, but it could be. So I said, do you have 5 minutes? Can I show you how to clean your water? And so in 5 minutes, I showed them how to clean their water, and I drank it. And everyone just freaked out. And, you know, and so that's always been the approach. So bottom line is, I scrapped the whole same idea and I expanded it. So long story short, a podcast I was on, I was on Rich Roll's podcast. I've been on it several times, but this was, I don't know, the first or second one. Zach heard it and he was touched by something. I don't really know exactly at the time, but then Rich knew some people that knew him. So his people reached out to Rich, and Rich said, is it cool that I give Zach your number? And I was like, sure. You know, if you and I can probably swap stories of how many celebrities or athletes want something, but then maybe do it or don't do it, or it's kind of ends up to be a waste of time. So I wasn't holding my breath, and I really didn't know about Zach. I knew who he was. And 3 months later, I get this random cold text, meaning like I didn't know the number. And it was him. And so it was very sweet. And we ended up going out to eat, talking about everything from health and superfoods and supplements and life and perspective, and just end up connecting. And at the very end, he said, "What else are you doing?" "I have this idea for a show." I wasn't even pitching him. I had no idea he would want to do anything like that. So long story short, he calls me back after that 2.5 hour meeting. And he said, "I have a deal at Netflix, but it's a completely different show that I don't want to do. And I talked to my team, and we think we can change the idea to this, and I'll travel with you." Boom. And it happened. Incredible.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Those synchronicities. It was already aligned.
And this is important. If I didn't start and listen to myself about what I wanted, and I started moving on developing it and stuff, it was now something developing as real.
Right.
So I was able to voice it. And in that voicing, it resonated with Zach. Yeah. It wasn't me reaching out to Zach. It was this magnetic thing. And you know, the reception of the show. Now listen, I wanted to go a lot deeper on the show, right? And I almost walked away when we were in Puerto Rico. We actually filmed that first. It wasn't in the order of the show that came out, but that's we filmed first. And I was frustrated because I'm like, am I going to be involved in something about a celebrity and like this I care about? I live this. And the last thing I want is some watered down. And so I straight up was telling the whole production like this. And what I realized is that trust in them and them understanding what we're doing truly. And believe me, I spent time saying, this is what this show is about. Mm-hmm. It's about moving forward and health of the people and health of the planet, period. And then they adopted. They didn't come from this place, but they took it on and they were touched. And so letting go of my control and realizing that they have some serious talent in sharing a story mm-hmm. that's reachable to people that aren't, putting on slippers and, wishing under rainbows. They're normal people. And so I trusted them. And man, and the reception, the timing.
It was like the #1 show.
Yeah. And
this was, of course, during the shutdowns, quarantine times. So like the universe opened that portal even wider for more people to be impacted. And I'm sure you've probably received an absolute flood, an absolute barrage of stories of folks who've had their lives changed just from watching it and thinking differently.
To this day, every day. Hundreds of thousands of messages. It's unbelievable.
You know why? One of the big, of course you know why. I'm just like, why? But it helps us to see things that we normally don't see. Like we are facing so many different issues. And this is what I really, really love about you, man. And I love your standards. When you were talking about walking away, that really hit me, man. Like for real, because it's the concern, it's the care that you have for what matters most, and for folks to actually see, like we're facing issues today with, our water, and most people have no idea about it. Yeah. We got something coming through the tap. It seems like it's friendly and it's clean, it's pure water, but the chemicals that are added to our water, there are better methods, and they exist. And there are nations that are taking advantage of the technology, and you guys show it. Yeah. The deforestation taking place. There are sustainable methods. Like we can, all the animals that are going extinct, that are endangered, like we're just wiping out so much of the planet. Yeah. And it's not a matter of like, we can't have our needs met. It's just a matter of not having sustainable practices. Mm-hmm. And here in the United States, there's so many things that the technology exists, the methods exist to do things better. And so I want to talk about a couple of these. And when you first got here, my son Braden, because he told me before, he went to his class, He was like, Dad, can you tell your friend that I really like his show? And I was like, you tell him, when he gets here, I'll call you down. And that's the first thing he said to you, like even for kids, like he really he was like, and he was picking like, Dad, can we watch the next one with the bees, But let's talk about water first. That was the France episode. And by the way, if you ever seen Down to Earth with Zach and Darin,
come on,
let's go. I mean, I think, of course, like tons of people are going to watch it now. It's so beautifully done. Of course, like you said, it's that trust and the cinematography and the vibes and also the teaching and the things we pick up. But I saw so first of all, talk about the water sommelier experience, and then let's talk about the systems that they're using in France and parts of France. I don't think it's all over, but at least they've got like some pilot things going. The way that they're doing their water and their water treatment is just remarkable compared to what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean that was super special. The sommelier this was a big debate because I've spent a lot of time with some of the top water scientists in the world. I went to Bulgaria at the water conference. Literally, it exists where they share their data together of all these guys. So the water conversation, from dead water to live water, and what chemically, biologically, quantumly is going on with water will blow your mind. So when we were discussing water, the water episode, I wanted to get into that deep, pun intended.
I was like, come on.
and it was and listen, it was hard to it would have been a whole film, the whole series talking about the miraculousness and the power and the understanding and the not understanding of water. So the miraculousness of water, but the way we decided to do it was through this Lourdes talk, because it exists, and it really is starting. It's just literally the start of the conversation about what potential this is, right? This has properties that demonstrate from a quantum reality, right? It demonstrates chemically, it demonstrates biologically.
He's holding water right now.
Yeah, by what is done to the water, and what is, I mean, the Emoto's work was revolutionary, right? While putting emotion and words on bottles, on glasses, and then taking and then freezing the geometry of what was happening based on emotion, essentially, based on words. They realized that was communicating in the quantum way to the organizing principle of water. And it was demonstrated, if you say love, that water is literally changing itself to demonstrate an organizing principle of love, right? So, and listen, if people are going, oh, what is he talking about? It's frequency, it's vibes, right? So you can hook up frequencies to a plate and pour sand on it and hit certain frequencies, and that sand will organize itself in perfect geometry. You can find this all over YouTube, like something you can do in 7th grade. So it's not out of the realm of frequency and hertz and all of this stuff communicating. So what we decided was, like, let's go to the place that is unexplainable, that there's miracles happening, and that's happening still in Lourdes. And you talked about the sommelier, but I'm kind of getting into the doctor and the miraculousness of that. So that goes into, I'll probably just bookend it there, but that episode was demonstrating that there's a lot more going on with water. And then when we talked to the sommelier here in LA, we then talked about kind of the mechanics of water, like what's in it, and the amount of minerals, and water's not just water, right? And so literally these natural places around the world, he's coming in with bottles of water that are from natural sources. They're not created by man. And it tastes like Alka-Seltzer, or it's got huge amounts of magnesium. So it becomes kind of this functional beverage that is technically exactly still water, right? So the water episode was just a drop in the ocean of what water is and isn't, and what it can do, and how it can influence the body, and et cetera. So
these principles that you're talking about are so real. It's just I think we were largely jaded by water, but we are mostly that.
Yeah.
And to think that water can't do these things on the surface, and now again, like these things, you can replicate these studies, but water is a storage center for data, for information. 100%. You can store information in water. We talk about the cloud, it's made of water.
Yeah.
But truly, water has an intelligence where it can become whatever it interacts with. And I talk about this all the time. There is no pure H2O anywhere in nature. Exactly. It does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
But when we're in school, we're taught we need to get H2O, make sure you get plenty of pure water. That's not how water works. And so in that episode, so I've been talking about this stuff, even like Find a Spring, like one of the people I've been helping people to get, on there over the years, Daniel Vitalis, but the TDS.
Yeah.
And I was like looking for that ideal everyday drinking water. But then I really got it. Like sometimes the super high TDS can have healing properties for different things.
Yeah.
And it is able to get where it needs to go in your body more effectively because it's in a water medium, right? And so when you had talk about one of the high it was like 7,000 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, what?
So there is a clarity to make on TDS too, because when you look at TDS stands for total dissolved solids. So in nature, if we say TDS, you're presuming that there's no man-made contaminants and toxins. So then if you measure the value of TDS, then you're going, okay, TDS, this has 7,000 parts per million of magnesium, for example, right? So from a TDS perspective, cool. But TDS now in modern day world is also the total of every total dissolved solid.
Right.
So we have to be very careful. And something we didn't unpack enough in the episode was, if I go to your tap right now and I turn that on and I see a high TDS, let's call it's probably about 500. I've tested so many, 500 parts per million. You're like, oh my God, this is a great water. It's got a lot of minerals and all of that stuff. But if you break that down, pesticides, herbicides, phthalates from plastic, drugs that we flush down the toilet are too small to filter out through these, mechanisms that we've had. So chlorine, fluorides, all of this stuff. And then you have interactions with chlorine with other volatile compounds. So then you have unknown things showing up in your waterways. The whole idea of chlorine is, like, I get it. It's a way to make sure that you're not having deadly bacteria kill you upon drinking it. So there's a reason why they're because they have to measure it so that, for the most part, as far as that's traveling, that it's going to kill off bad bacteria and pesticides and whatever, or parasites or whatever. So now we have to look at total dissolved solids as a completely different thing. And you have to look at it like the majority of what's in your tap is going to be unwanted total dissolved solids. So my point of view is you have to actually strip that water down to build it back up again, right? So reverse osmosis, distillation, but then you have to make sure that you do not drink that on its own, or else it's an empty vessel that's looking to balance itself chemically through the electrolytes. It will steal it from your body if you drink it without adding a pinch of Himalayan crystal salt, a pinch of unrefined crystal salt, or there's, other kinds of minerals that you can add to it that will help then create hydration in your body, because your body or your cells need that in order for the hydration to go in and out of the cell. So That's the most important thing. So the tap water is not a healthy thing. You have to strip it down in order to build it back up, in order to actually get cellular hydration.
Right. That's such a great point of clarity, because when we get the TDS from natural sources, natural spring water, for example, that is more functional. It's not some abnormal thing that's added. And I want to ask you about this because this was highlighted in that episode in France. Instead of adding chemicals to the water, which again, and again, I've said this many times, the intention behind it, I get it. Yeah. We don't want it, consuming any pathogenic whatever that can kill you very quickly. Like you said early in the story, when folks, it's a Russian roulette situation. Mm-hmm. But there are better ways to go about it rather than adding something that doesn't care what kind of bacteria it is. Yeah. It's killing stuff in you too. Yeah. And so they were using this incredible system, and the water's coming out all over the city at these different water distribution points, mm-hmm. like all over the place. And their process is really remarkable. Can you talk about what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, they were using, they did still use a little bit of chlorine, but what they did is they killed, so they recycled, so the water's coming in, they had to clean it. But the primary thing is the oxygenation,
right,
that they created. And we know that high oxygen environments, and people can extrapolate this towards the body too. When you create a higher ability for your body to saturate and to receive oxygen, it creates a different environment. So when you have a high oxygen environment in water, then the anaerobic bacteria, virus, fungus can't survive. So that they had these very cool, like cauldrons of bubbling and moving and oxygenating the water. So that water was high oxygen, balanced pH water going out. But the only problem is that it still had to, so leaving, perfect, beautiful, but it still had to go through piping. Right, and stagnant water in any pipe is as soon as something stops moving, it's starting to die and breed bacteria, virus, or fungus. So they still had to add a little chlorine to make sure that as it's leaving the facility, even though it's deemed a great balanced water, they still had to use a little of the chlorine. Yeah. But again, this is moving in a better direction. Not to mention the obvious, the providing clean water for everyone in the city, instead of having a weird world where we're putting water in petroleum containers, and that's called plastic. And that plastic, for everyone listening, the softer the plastic is, the more estrogen-mimicking compounds they use to make it soft. So that is leaching into your water, and those estrogen-mimicking compounds are infusing into your water, which is largely leading, along with several other hormone-disrupting activities we're doing, of toxicities in our environment. It's neutering us and affecting and causing a hormone disruption. So it's a really bad idea to be drinking. Obviously, if you're if you're traveling, and I wouldn't suggest staying dehydrated. Drink water, but don't make that a normal habit.
Did we talk about that?
I think so.
Yeah.
You had a story where you were like, I'm not drinking any of that, and I'm going to stay dehydrated.
I was just going to basically, murder myself of dehydration rather than drinking out of plastic. Like, we don't want to be neurotic,
right?
But functionally, like you said, there's so many different degrees of this, and none of these systems really are going to be perfect, but there's better. Yeah. There's so much better that we could be doing. And on that, when you said neutering, like, that's a real thing. Even in Eat Smarter, I share some of the studies related to, BPA and infertility, and the studies are pretty shocking. Yeah. But it's not just BPA. There's BPS. There's other compounds, and it's just understanding water is it's the universal solvent. And these these things we're putting them into, they photodegrade,
Yeah.
And so with that system, did they also use, so I know they use oxygens, it was ozone,
Yep.
and yeah, and it was also available for everybody, So this
Exactly.
is a better way that we can get this stuff done. But even with that, another thing that you guys highlighted was sustainability with powering your cities. What do you do with all of the, a lot of folks are concerned about the CO2.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that, what the folks in Iceland were doing?
Yeah. Well, Iceland's a unique place because they have two forms of environmental energy systems that are quite abundant, and that is geothermal. So you have a lot of activity underneath the ground of heat and molten, streams of lava and changes. Anytime you have changes of heat, you can gobble up and you can use that exchange for power. Just like they have tens of thousands of rivers, and you dam a few of them, and just by the kinetic movement of water, you can capture that and move turbines. So they're very unique from that perspective. And in the episode, they saw this new borehole that they just were going to start capping, and it was just this Mother Earth screaming and loud and powerful. It's like almost just overwhelming, and so they were capturing just this natural power that Mother Earth had there. And the cool thing they were doing with the CO2, and part of the process, there was a certain amount of CO2 that came out. So instead of letting it go into the atmosphere, they were capturing the CO2 and then injecting the CO2 back into the natural rock surfaces. And so then it would naturally just kind of absorb and make a rock formation. And so that was a really cool technology that I had no idea about. That can be adopted in any sort of industry that's releasing CO2. And I mean, the lumber industry and all of those things, could you be utilizing that? I mean, that's a whole discussion. An archaic.
We were just talking about
Yeah.
number 2 pencils.
Yeah. And just using wood for building is just a really bad idea. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else. I've never seen a number 1 pencil. I've never seen a number 4.
Yeah.
Just those number 2 stuck, man.
I don't know what it is.
So now this is what, for so many people, you're really known for, is bringing these superfoods to public awareness, but also going to the place, talking with the people who are putting everything together, who's growing the food, making sure every part of it is done ethically and everybody is winning. And of course, in the different episodes, you guys are going on location, doing the thing, superfood hunting. You find these random things that you guys are like, you chop down, and like just so many things that we have no idea where something might come from. Yeah. And just questions of like, why have I never seen this before? Well, it's because of, it can't travel well, or whatever the case might be. You answer so many questions. But in your travels, you discovered, my team, we're over here, we're all snacking on it. This is my favorite snack that I keep on my counter. Can you talk about Barukas? Yeah. Like why this? And just talk about how remarkable it is. Because again, it's I keep it on the counter. It's one of my favorite snacks.
It's crazy. This was Barukas, the nut, the story, the connection to the environment. This is from nearly 20 years of doing this. This was like checking all the boxes of kind of looking through the lens of ethnobotany. And ethnobotany is not just looking at a linear approach or reductionist approach, like I just need to take this nut and sell it to the US. The ethnobotanical lens is looking at culture, it's looking at the people, it's looking at the farmers, it's looking at the environment, it's looking at the trade, it's looking at the history, it's looking at all of these things and understanding that. And that's exhausting in a good way, to be able to try to come in as a white dude in the middle of some heavy disparity in terms of no money in the middle of the Cerrado. The Cerrado, the tropical savanna where the Baruzeda tree is grown and the Barukas come from, it's this technically a shrub, but it's a tree. You look at it, it's like, yeah, it's a tree, but it's in the Fabaceae family. So it's technically a big shrub. But it's a nitrogen fixer, right? So it pulls abundance of nitrogen out of, and actually not only for itself, but all the plants around it. So it's a sacred tree. You find that right away when you're talking to the indigenous people. And we had some incredible meetings of PhDs all the way to tribal elders, this badass woman that was 35 years old and running kind of the tribal as a tribal leader. And we're like, listen, we want to do this as trade. We're going to pay more than what's been going on country. This is what we want to do. And could we do this in your area? And you know, you got to do that. You got to come in with humility and understanding and learn, like, how would this work for you? Like, how is this going to happen? So the Cerrado, the tropical savanna, is 500 million acres. No one knows of this place. It's this, call it the sister of the Amazon, right? So it mostly Brazil, southern end of Brazil, into Paraguay and Bolivia. And it is one of the most diverse biomes in the world, with harboring over 4,400 plants, right? No one knows about it. And it's not the huge canopy of the Amazon, but it's a tropical savanna. So you have kind of deserty areas like a Joshua tree in California to like a semi-tropical and everything in between, and goes through a drought, about 9 months of a drought. So the Baruzeda tree taps deep, deep and hits the aquifer and feeds itself from the water from the aquifer. At the same time, fixing this nitrogen for the plants around it. So it's an incredible, and then these nuts, this fruit has this, it's technically called a drupe. So it's a fruit, it's got this thin fruit layer with one nut inside. And the beautiful thing, I think it had humans in mind, because you cannot pick it early. It does not form the nut until the last moment. And as soon as it's done forming the nut, it drops to the ground. So you can't go out and pick it up and like, nut's not there. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's natural. It's a wild food. So the Barukas is a wild food. For us to be able to scale a business is insane for what we did. In a landmass the size of 3 states of Texas at 500 million acres, to gather around community after community after community of thousands of people, indigenous people, of people like, we weren't the first people that wanted to do this, but we were looked at as disappointment, because I've been in situations so many times where some dude came in, promised the world, and they didn't deliver. So you have to really take a trusting steps together. Like, you pick this, we'll pay you for the next 20 years. That's our motto. We're going to pay you. You're going to know. We're going to announce our price. So someone can't undercut you. We're going to pay, and all of that stuff. And that's a big deal, right? So we're creating stability for people that have nothing in the middle of the savannah, that don't want to leave. That's where they're from. And we're paying them better than what they paid. We're consistent. And listen, everyone listening, I hope you check out these nuts and eat them, because you're creating stability for an ecosystem. You're creating stability for these fair wages for these people, consistency. And we're planting trees in the savannah, because the sad, I've lost tears because of this. Because when you're in the middle of, if you don't think the climate is going through changes, now whether you can argue, well, it's always gone through changes, correct. But when you're meeting people that have lived there generation after generation and say, this has never happened. Okay, it's never happened. And at the same time, you're driving thousands. I've driven thousands of kilometers through this savanna, and you're seeing the stripping of this savanna for unsustainable factory farming of beef, and then unsustainable practice of growing soy and corn. And you're knowing that 4,400 species of plants, thousands of species of animals, and you're knowing that medicinal plants, Baroseda tree, Barukas are there, and that is an economy that can be utilized and be beneficial for everybody. Because you look at, okay, it's an economic thing to grow the beef industry. Well, that's just a choice. You can grow many industries that keeps the environment intact. So when I'm seeing the stripping, it's just gutting. But then creating value back to these people that are not also going to sell off their land because they need to feed their children. That is a strong pull. So I don't hold them responsible. I hold the responsibility back to us. Stop eating so much meat. Stop eating unsustainable meat. Stop eating factory farmed crap that's not good for you. Stop all that crap and support nutrient density. Support our company, other companies that are transparent and trying to do things good. So we have tree planting programs. We're building back this Baroseda tree. It's a sacred tree to them. And we're creating stability back. And not to mention everyone eating them. Come on. They're the most delicious nut in the world. They are so freaking good. On top of it, they have a nutrient density that blows every nut away through our scientific discovering, right? No oxalates, phytic acid, protease inhibitors, none of that stuff. Hell, Dr. Gundry is his favorite nut.
That's like, big deal.
Yeah.
He's the lectin guy.
He's the lectin guy. So no oxalates, no lectins.
Wow.
Right? So it's his go-to. So that's a big deal. But the nutrient density, complete protein, the antioxidants, it's a wild food. Antioxidants got nearly 400% more antioxidant phenolic tannin power than like an almond. When an almond is so bloody unsustainable that in order to produce most of the almonds are produced here in California, it's taking all of the water that it takes to give LA is the same amount of water that it takes to grow the almonds every year. It is so unsustainable. And this is, guess what? No pesticides, no herbicides, no water. Wild food. We just pick it up and we leave one for every two we pick up, we leave one. So it's this natural thing, and we support the environment, we plant the trees, we help the people, and you as a person who's willing to try it, it tastes freaking amazing, and you're getting literally the most nutrient density. So fiber, 2 times more fiber than the closest high fiber nut, 3 times more than almost any one of them. Like I said, the antioxidant, complete protein, and then a lower fat content. So you're lower calories per bite than any nut, as well as all manganese, huge. So bone health, insulin support, antioxidant capacity, obviously calcium, potassium, copper, iron. Like, it's literally so your question as a superfood hunter, and I'm seeing superfoods to me is a new definition. It's not just about the food. Is it super for the people that are picking it up? Is it super for you eating it? Is it super for the environment? Is it making life better getting that out in the world? And to the best of our ability, from as much research and as much conversations as we've had and the supportive nature that we have in those communities, we would say absolutely yes. So transparent, open, so that people can literally benefit. I can't stop myself when I realize that the people on the ground, the indigenous people benefit, the environment benefits, and the people consuming it benefit. As a superfood hunter, are you kidding? And and we're vertically integrated. And we've been FDA approved and HACCP certified and all of that stuff. And so I'd do that for free if it was sustainable. We need to make some money in order for that to continue to expand. But that's what I've been doing all my life. I've been making formulas and giving them to people.
Yeah.
And this is, again, a wide scale. So all your people listening, I know, are wonderful listeners and they care about those things. And so I'm not just saying we're the only people doing it. And I know that more customers from clothing production to better products for your babies, to supplements, to food people, everyone, I believe we need to vote with our dollars as customers. And this is what we need to do. So I'm challenging other businesses, other supplement companies, other food companies to step up, because us as customers, as the only thing keeping the lights on in these businesses, we demand what is in the marketplace. And we're proud of what we've been doing.
Yeah, man, it's game changing. You know, I love that redefining superfoods because of course, we have the opportunity to nourish ourselves at a completely different level and make the planet better, you know, leave it much better than when we got here, you know, but it's going to take a shift in thinking. So I love that so much.
And it's not easy.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't make
Nobody
it easy.
said it's going to be easy.
This has never left the country, essentially. Like I mean, it's insane what we've been trying to do. Organizing, you know, millions of acres and thousands of people. There's a reason why it never left. Barukas was going away. They were shutting, that nut was going away in the country. They couldn't even sell it sustainably inside the country. Guess what they can do now? Sell it sustainably inside the country from what we did. So not only they are benefiting and eating their indigenous nut, but now we're able to get it out in the world. So it's not easy, and it takes time, and it takes effort. But that effort, man, when you get to hang out with people and you get to sit around, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but your heart is there and you want it to happen, and we're doing everything we can to continue.
You're a superhero, man. You're an absolute superhero. You are. Like your life was setting you up for these moments. Like you said, you've been discovering things and putting formulas together and giving them away, you know, and then you just keep moving on because there's an insatiable desire to discover and also to make things better, you know, and like you said, it's not easy. And especially in the world right now, we need this more than ever. Yeah. And I love that redefining, but I also love the fact that this food, you can't even make a comparison to an almond. It's like an almond that works out, that's been like eating a really great, well-rounded, unique, personalized diet. Like that's the taste and the benefits from it are remarkable. And, you know, I had Barukas prior, but when I was with you at your place, you gave me the Barukas, a trail mix. And I'm just like, I literally, when I looked at I just saw the name before I looked at like what was in it. And I'm like, what the hell is he having here with a trail mix? Like, what's going to match up with this? It was the fruit that comes around the nut. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I don't know if people will really like this. And then I opened it up and I started eating it. I'm like, people will really like this. Yeah. And my team just like, same thing. They had something like, this is so good. This is incredible. And it all comes together in this one, again, in the true words of a superfood, you know, nutrient dense, delicious, helping to really actually make the planet better. Food. It's just great. It's the triple win.
Yeah,
you know?
that fruit was I tell you, that was interesting because in that discovery was one of the trips. And I was looking at this 5-year-old fruit that hadn't been cracked open. So the fruit was there, and I was looking at it, and I looked at the one that I just picked up. And I looked, and they looked exactly the same. I'm like, how the hell is that fruit not breaking down? After 5 years? Wasn't in some special place. It was in a warehouse, so it wasn't like sitting out in the sun. It wasn't being rained on, but it was just sitting. And I was like, you know what's going on in that thing? There's definitely antioxidants. There's definitely special fibers keeping it together. There's definitely high mineral content. There has to be. So I started literally in the back of a truck bouncing around, taking a knife and carving out the fruit, putting it in a bag, bringing it home and testing it. And lo and behold, high antioxidants, prebiotics. So it literally has food for the good microflora. That blew me away. Wasn't expecting that. Again, more antioxidants, more iron, more all of that stuff. So I was like, and then we dried it and added it back. And again, the trail mix was born. So, you know, it's that alchemy of it together. Just, it's kind of like I think of it like a graham. You ever eat a graham cracker back in the day?
Of course.
Yeah.
I was like 5% graham cracker, man. Yeah. They called me Grams. No one called me that. Could have been.
Yo, Grams. No, so for me, I think it's like this graham cracker on
right.
steroids. Like
Yeah.
it's just so good
That's
and
so
crunchy.
true. I didn't think about that.
So it's like a nice cheat, but you get all these benefits with it.
Wow, that's so cool. By the way, if you're like, where can I get them? Right now, barukas.com/model. That's BARUKAS.com/model. Of course, we're going to hook you up. This is so much more than this term superfood has been something that's been proliferated our culture recently, but this is in that true domain where, and I've always wondered these things, but you were the guy and actually going and checking. You know, I'm just like wondering, like, how are the people being taken care of? How is this process sustainable? Because we tend to find out something that's really great and then marketers mess things up. Yeah. And that's what's taken it so long, and all the hours that you put in, all the sweat equity into making this something real and sustainable. And so just, man, this is why, like, again, I told you, I want to support you, everything that you do. You're one of my favorite people already. You know, shout out to Chaga, your dog. You know, as soon as I got out of the car, we had good vibes, but he looks like, you know, he could definitely eat a person, you know. But just, you're such a good person, and, you know, your heart's in the right place, and you're putting in the work, man. Like, you've done some absolutely, how many countries have you been to, like, superfood hunting?
I don't know. I think it's over 40. You know?
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
Crazy, you know. But all of this plays out in moments like this where we need it the most. Our country, more so than ever, we need real deep nutrition. Yeah. We need to do things that create more sustainability, because we've just been this consumption without seeing the quote side effect, but it's really direct effect. Yeah. You know, we're not seeing where our food's coming from or where things are going once it's done. And now it's like we're pulling back the veil and we're showing folks, here's what happens if we do it this way. Here's what can happen if we do it this way. Yeah. And you're one of those people, man. So just huge props, man. I appreciate you truly for what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, I'm so stoked that we got to connect, and I love what you're doing. And it's just the start, man. We need it more than ever to help change the trajectory of how things have been done. Yeah. And so put in the work, everybody, no matter what you're doing, where you're at. Get to it. We need it.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to up-level your health today.
I just do detective work and say, okay, you know, what are these external forces, many of which are food, and many of which are the products we've made